Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues Episode 8, Special Education in Vermont, something that hits home with me because, of course, if you don't know this about me, I was a special ed kid for behavioral rather than academic reasons. I always excelled at all the work that I was doing, but I didn't play nice with others, and things sort of snowballed over time. Through middle school, actually. 9/11 didn't help. That was a little bit stressful when we thought the Hoover Dam had been nuked or something. Just some rumors flying around. Then things magically got better in high school, and then the state decided to do what it does with most people and, it cuts you off in your senior year. I'll try to explain. Special education in Vermont is screwy. It's better than in some states, but essentially, if you have you have all these news stories from throughout time where parents, they're trying to do the right thing and, trying to get their kid the help they need, and, their kid is fed properly and sheltered properly, not being abused or something. But you make one misstep, they have cases where kids get fucking taken away by the state. Meanwhile, you got total deadbeats. They're chain smoking drunks, drug users or something. And then the kid doesn't get taken away, they're there forever, and the state's like, oh, we can't do anything about this. We've had cases in this state where somebody, they smoke a small amount of marijuana, they get their kid taken away. Now, they're perfectly well functioning, they have plenty of money, they're not doing really anything wrong, and they get screwed. Or someone's, we've had this in other states, somebody oh yeah, I left my kid at home for 20 minutes because I had to go try to get a job. The state's telling me I should be a welfare serf or something like that, and they get in trouble. But then again, somebody who's clearly not fit as a parent, they're corporal punishment number one, their kid stays with them. So that's the first level of goofiness. I think that the greater level of goofiness, though, because the CPS people, they, at least some of them try to do a good job. They try to do what's right. But in schools, there's a different story. What this state does is it tries to get as many people as possible, with or without actual sane reason why, into special ed programs at an early age. Basically, if your kid isn't the model child willing to sit still for hours at a time, that's normal, by the way, for an elementary school-aged kid. If your kid isn't willing to sit there quietly and isn't model behavior, they'll say, oh, ADHD or something like that, pill them up, because the teachers don't want to have to deal with that shit. And sometimes neither do the parents, honestly. And then they'll put them on an IEP, and then the state gets money from the government, from the federal government. The school gets money from the state to do this. So it just makes fiscal sense. There's a profit motive involved with trying to get as many special ed kids as possible. However, if you graduate in this country while being special ed, you get certain government subsidies, because the assumption is, oh, well, you rose above adversity. Your mental illness, you should get free money for that, because otherwise you won't be able to compete with these other people. Now, what the state and government does then is they close out your IEP when you're a senior in high school so that they don't have to pony up any money for you. The second that you graduate, they want to prove that you're actually, oh yeah, it was a joke the whole time. We had them in special ed so we could get money, for the school from the state and for the state from the federal government. But now we're closing the case now that they're, almost 18, because they're no longer disabled anymore. It's a totally different story. Yeah, we labeled little Jimmy was a schizophrenic narcissist all those years. Suddenly he got better. What can we say? Perfectly fine functioning. And then they throw them to the curb. That's what they did this to me. Now, my own foibles within special ed was basically, I have some ADHD, so that means I like to bounce around from one thing to another. My organizational skills, not necessarily the greatest in the world, fairly clearly. And I do fine despite, being screwed by the government on this token like everybody else. But, 9/10 of the time, when you get to that higher age, they're going to do that. They're going to try to screw you so they don't have to give you your special grant to go to college. They especially like to do this with people. If it's technical ed being taken by somebody who is of otherwise normal rudimentary intelligence, they might keep them on. But if somebody's actually getting like really good grades, then even if they've spent years and years constantly talking about how they have massive mental difficulties, they're going to kick them off their IEP and go to some other form. There's one that's like an intermediary between you're normal and you're retarded, basically, that they slap you on so they don't have to give you free government money. So they like to, especially if you're in the lower rungs of the economy, they love to screw you then. Yeah, Vermont, so progressive. Let's give people free college, but for years and years now, we've been depriving that from people that supposedly overcame massive adversity. And it's always a joke. It's a total fucking lie. I was in special ed when I was like in elementary and middle school for behavioral problems. What nobody at the time had the knowledge to realize was the reason I was having difficulties behaviorally, and I say everyone else had a fucking difficulty with me more than I had with anybody else. The reason was the work they were giving me was fucking boring. If I'm sitting there in class, you get a 45-minute period of time, and they give you the day's work, some mathematical calculations, read up on this history and write a short essay or something like that. And I get done with it in 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm getting straight A's in most of these classes while doing so. What am I supposed to do for the next half hour? Am I supposed to just sit there quietly and do nothing? Like, oh, you can't doodle, you can't, you're not supposed to read any books that aren't related to this class. So I'm going to sit there, I'm in math class. 5 minutes go by, the work is done. I got another half hour, 35 minutes to wait. I'm supposed to fucking sit there and read a math textbook and that's all I'm supposed to do? No, it's not going to happen because that's lunacy. And I called it what it was at the time, and I said, well, I'm just going to start drawing weird shit, and then I'm going to distract other people because, who cares? And start giving them these little, what I had at the time to amuse myself, I called them mad cards. And I would draw these pictures of people like Ranting Ralph and Crazy Chris and, Demented Dwayne and all these other things. And they were like these really weird caricatures. And on the back of these little slips of paper, I would put their various like mental proclivities because I thought madness itself was funny at the time. Because, I got people pretending that I'm a little bit mad at that specific juncture in life. And so I would like pass these out randomly to people, and I'd be sitting there giggling and choking with laughter because I thought it was hilarious. And then I'd zoom around the class on my chair sometimes and make weird noises because I'm bored. What else am I supposed to do? I'm like this elementary school kid. Oh, what do you expect is going to happen when you deprive me of intellectual rigor? They should have put me past a couple of grades or something if they wanted me to be less bored. Now, when I got to high school, now that all took place in Woodstock. And Woodstock is closed-minded anyway. There's a lot of weirdos that teach in Woodstock. I don't have, by the way, any respect for the elementary or middle school there that I went to. They were atrocious. I get to high school, go to Mill River, all of a sudden I found out, oh, there's like, college prep and honors and AP courses and stuff here. Well, maybe I won't be so bored, and so I sign up for a bunch of these. Lo and behold, what happens? I'm acting perfectly normal. See, the diagnosis of ADHD was the result of being perpetually bored because people were never giving me work that was at an appropriate level. I was reading at a college level when I was in 4th fucking grade. So I got a little bit bored in these classes. Math, I was even further ahead in math. Until I lost total interest in it and I just became a slacker when it came to those courses. I was like, I got a B+, that's okay, I don't really care. And by the way, that was the right decision to make. I was enhancing my architectural drawing skills instead in math class most of the time, because once I got done with it, I would just have another piece of paper and I'd fiddle around with that. I'd be drawing like floor plans and stuff. And I thought that was quite interesting, by the way. Architectural drawing, one of the best courses I took. And even there, like, I would get done. But see, there's a difference. Once you get to high school, some of the teachers, they're a little bit less concerned with stay on task. So in architectural drawing, when I finished the project that we were doing for the semester, and I finished it a month ahead, nobody had a problem with me if I went on and started doing other random architectural shit. Nobody cared. They thought, well, it's kind of related to the course. Some people were watching bum fights at the time. They got done, a few weeks early too. They spent the last week or two slacking off. I was sitting there drawing up architectural cartoons, if you can believe that. I had one called Junior Senior Dude, and it was this like mentally deranged kid with a mohawk, and he was in the Special Olympics, and he was trying to like cross the finish line by using a large balloon, and he was holding a spear, and he was trying to get across the finish line, and they were all giving him zeros because they just thought he was whacked out and stuff. I thought that was funny. I never had a problem in high school. Like, the only time I ever had a problem in high school was with the librarian that replaced the one that was there when I was like, I think I was a freshman. And then sophomore year, the librarian changes. That year, I didn't need to use the library or anything for some reason. I can't remember why. But like junior year, I kind of sparred with her because she's like, oh, you're printing out a lot of pages. I'm like, yeah, I'm printing out a grimoire. At the time, I was. It's like it was the Ars Goetia. And then I was making these weird like cartoons and stuff on the computers there. Apparently, she thought one of them was inappropriate. Nobody else cared. The people in the office, she sent me to the office, they didn't care either, but they said, okay, well, she's kicked you out of the library for a week, so you're going to have to respect that. We fucking cared. I was getting my work done. I was getting good grades. I was in the National Honor Society. But yeah, the special ed programs we have in Vermont are a joke. I don't know exactly how they are in many states. I can tell you here they're a joke. Total fucking joke. The state will kick you off that IEP when you hit senior year unless there's a real compelling reason not to. And it really sucks for somebody who was essentially mistreated for the first 8 years I was in school, because all of them were dumbasses and didn't realize they should be giving me more interesting work. Like, instead of having me read the fucking Berenstain Bears, why don't you give me, Roots or something like that? Something more age appropriate as far as my mental levels going on. I suffered because I was literally too far ahead. Because I was reading on my own. What did I do during summer vacation? Well, I didn't have home internet. I would go to the library. I'd be reading a book every couple days. I was reading half the friggin' library. So I got bored. What can I say? If it was reading, I got bored. If it was writing, I got bored. If it was math, I got bored. The only thing that I didn't get bored in was science, and that's because the teacher there, he was competent. The one teacher competent in Woodstock Elementary School is the science teacher, Mr. Stayhauer. I can use his. I think he's out of the school now, so I think he's dead, because he was pretty old then. And he was like this weird shaker dude. It was an actual shaker, like a religious kind of quasi-zealot. It was great. He was like, yeah, just go off and play with the microscopes and stuff. I thought that was wonderful. And then I sort of would take a position in back. Yeah, everyone else is still doing the normal work. I'm sitting there fiddling around with microscopes and reading up about chemistry and stuff because I thought it was fascinating. I was a little bit of a weird kid. But the same state that decided, yeah, he's like mentally fucked up in some capacity, suddenly didn't think that anymore when it came time to graduate, because we can't be giving people these grants. We can't be, we would have to give them state money. See, there's the problem. They don't have a problem with it as long as the feds are guaranteeing it, and they make a big show about how much they love the mentally disabled, supposedly. And then all of a sudden you're perfectly normal when push comes to shove. When they have to give you state money that the federal government won't be a guarantor for, all of a sudden they have a problem with dispensing it, kick you off as quickly as possible. And it's a wretched, backwards, and dishonest system. And many Vermonters don't have experience with it, so they don't know this is going on. So you've got people who, by all means, are probably more qualified to go study the sciences or something, who should be getting grants anyway, and the federal government doesn't want to do that. Just take out a loan, you'll be fine. Trust me, you working class kids, you'll be just fine taking out 30, 40 grand in college debt. Sure, you'll be able to pay it off. Yeah, I wonder why there's a student loan fucking bubble. They're talking about a bunch of billions in debt being erased because of a lawsuit where they can't even prove that they're the proper holders of the debt. Man, I hope that affects all of your student loan companies. For all of you out there with student debt, may you be one of the lucky ones that has loans serviced through one of these companies that's going to get all but wiped out. May you be one of those lucky ones, because you won't owe anymore. Oh, debt? I don't have any college debt. I promise I paid it off years ago. Oh, that letter over there? Throw it in the fireplace. Not saying you should commit fraud, but you should be so lucky as to be one. I don't think that my student loan servicer is among those companies, sadly. Yeah, keep paying up for that retarded education you got at a place where they didn't even give you proper counseling on what you should major in. Like, I remember going into UVM is the same story. You know, I'm this fresh-faced young kid just graduates, taking out all these loans. I thought that plant biology had to do with plants, but at UVM it has to do more with chemistry than anything else. I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but that's not exactly what I wanted to major in. So I ended up switching to political science and then anthropology, and thought that was pretty good. But yeah, a little bit about the special ed programs we have in Vermont. Also, they're going to take your more disabled kids. Basically, they had this one room at Mill River. This was funny. It wasn't like mistreatment or anything, but it was still funny. Sort of in the back, like a bad secret or something like that. It had these like weird rainbow colors next to the door and stuff. And I actually ate lunch for most of the time that I was in high school with the other special ed kids. Not because I was compelled to do so, but I was like, oh, these conversations are interesting. I thought it was great. You know, it was wonderful. Then again, I was also the weird kid who brought tea for lunch every day, so, you know, in a thermos. So, yeah, I'm a little bit out there. I always have been. I'm glad of that. I wouldn't be succeeding if I wasn't. I look at the so-called ADHD that I have, I look at it as like a godsend or something, because otherwise, you really think that I would be able to bounce back and forth between make a video, edit this work, start writing this, second section of editing, go out and do some work outside, get some exercise and stretch a little bit, do another video, go edit some more. Most people, they can't really do that. I'm actually lucky, honestly. In the sort of work that I'm engaged in, I consider myself very lucky. And I do find it funny, because a lot of those people from like Woodstock and stuff that just thought I was a problem child without realizing it's your fucking fault that I was a problem child. Because you thought that because I was sped, I must also be dumb and couldn't possibly do work a couple years ahead of my grade level, I guess. You know, I had to hold myself back and pretend not to be bored to tears. It makes me slightly happy now that all of these people, this is a little narcissistic perhaps, it makes me happy to know that I've succeeded more than them. That they're still stuck in their endeavors. And they're still probably making the same dumb mistakes too. And the state does as well. Yeah, we're not really no better on the special ed issue than any other state, because here there's a profit motive. It's like, you know, the people who work with those of us who had diagnosed ADHD, OCD, whatever, mild retardation, Asperger's syndrome. Those that work with them directly are competent generally within this state. Like, I never had a problem with most of these people. Some of them were quite kind. But the state itself is totally fucked up when it comes to this and sees it as nothing more than a way to make money, which helps because the state of Vermont already costs an arm and a leg when it comes to educating students. That gives you a world-class education, but there are states that pay a lot less than we do and get similar results, so I'm not sure how pragmatic that really is. That's about all. Peace out.